Brian, sound coming through all right? Okay, cool. It seems that this is our resident saddle bull, because when we started there was a saddle bull stalk here, and it would appear that it's the same saddle bull stalk, female saddle bull. Probably about 80% of the water from our first drive has evaporated by now, or just sunk into the ground. It's not being fed by the seepage coming from the higher ground, so this is now drying up rapidly. A couple of weeks ago when we first started our drives, this was a lovely big pan. Are you on that big warthog? Both. Lovely big male warthog at the back there. Can't see the others. There were some others. And I guess the saddle bull is waiting for her knight in shining armour, her equivalent of the knight on a white horse, to come in, sweep her off of her feet, catch a giant catfish and throw it on the land for her. Okay, that's pushing it a bit. Probably. But the saddle bulls are one of those birds that need to find a mate, and they mate for life. So it's really going to be a happy day when we find a big male saddle bull stalk here that's going to be courting her, because this poor girl's a little bit of an old maid at the moment. Yeah, wrong term. She's just unattached. Maybe she's a divorcee. With no baggage. Do you think there's a saddle bull stalk dating site that we could put a profile on?
I don't know if I'd appeal. I don't think my beak is red enough.
No, I mean for her, you know, we could take some photos and make a profile of single, attractive, slim, meticulous, the way she's cleaning herself, well groomed lady saddle bull stalk, looking for lasting permanent relationship with a view, with a with a view to starting a family. See, she likes that. She looked. She shrugged. Bunch of Nyala bulls. Let's go around a little bit. Maybe we'll be able to pick them up. With those impala there, a bunch of Nyala bulls there too. Maybe saddle bull stalk can take hours to clean yourself and look nice. Trust me, I've tried to film them. Sunday fun day. Sorry about the angle, Andy. Definitely lovely light on it. sorry, I'll just secure the vehicle that it stays put and doesn't move. And that's always difficult once I stop. Once we do, then it's steady. And this is an old buffalo bull that has chosen to live his life away from the herd, rather than follow the herd. The herds invariably number 50, 100, sometimes 200, in some places even up to 500, 600. And with such large herds, they have to move constantly to find new grazing, find new water. They're actually a very important part of the ecosystem. They play a very, very important role as a big herd. But sometimes these old bulls, when they get old, they don't really want to keep on moving all the time. They're no longer reproductive. It's a term, we use the term senile when we're referring to old animals that are no longer reproductive. And generally, animals that aren't reproductive anymore don't really last very long. So in the last days of life, sometimes it can last a few years actually with these old bulls. But they don't want to be caught up in the humdrum of moving around in a big breeding herd. They just find a spot where there's water and mud and grass. The three key ingredients for an old buffalo bull. Mud to wallow in, water to drink, or lie in for that matter, to escape the flies, and some good grazing. If we had some good line, I can almost see the clouds of flies that are on him. I don't know, can you pick it up? But we'd need him more or less on our right, looking into the sun to see them. But there are these clouds of flies. They're very, very tiny little flies, smaller than your domestic fly, that hang around the buffalo. And it's not that they bite. They don't have mouth parts to bite, because flies just don't have mouth parts that are able to, but they do have mouth parts that are able to suck blood. And these clouds of flies that are hanging around him can actually sort of, well, for us humans with our soft skin, I feel them when they try and put their proboscis into me, because they don't have that local anesthetic that mosquitoes have. Mosquitoes are also a fly of sorts. I've seen buffalo that are so upset by these flies that they put their faces under water to try and escape the irritation. And there's a giraffe that might come into the river or into view. It's just behind those bushes. I'll keep an eye on it, but there's a giraffe moving in the back here. You see its tail flicking. Deborah wants to know, is this Deborah in Florida? I wonder. Deborah wants to know about the moth that eat the horns. Yeah, they're from Florida. Well, it's not only buffalo. Hello, Deb. Deb wanting to know about the moths that eat the horns. There's the larva of a moth, and we call it the horn borer moth. Whose specific function in nature is to eat the horn material of antelope. So when an antelope is eaten by a lion or leopard or cheetah or hyena or wild dog, and its remains are left behind, there's maybe the hooves to some extent, because it's the same sort of product. But there's a moth that lays its eggs, and the larvae burrow into the horny covering of the bone. When we look at the horns of a buffalo, that is a horny covering of. There's an internal bone structure that is part of the skull that forms the horn. One of the primary differences between a bovid or the antelope and the bovids and the deer that you have in Europe and North America, whereby the deer don't have the bony structure internally that's connected to the skull, and that's why they lose their antlers every year. But these are not antlers, these are horns, and internally the structure is bone, part of the skull. I'm hoping that maybe I'll be able to find you a skull and I can show you. But as with everything in nature, there has to be something that eats whatever nature has produced. There's always a consumer of whatever living matter has been created. And so that hard, horny outer covering of all the bovid's horns, the buffalo, the antelope, there's the larva of a moth that burrows into it, and I haven't been able to find much about it, but I'm convinced that even in living buffalo, these larvae burrow into the horns. But it's the matter of, it's the act of the buffalo rubbing their horns against trees and in the mud that helps to control the larvae, as well as the eggs that are laid on their horns, to not do too much damage. But those, rather the texture, the patina of the buffalo's horns, to me show that there is a fair amount of horn borer moth larva in a living horn, or rather a living buffalo's horn. And it only really becomes evident when they die and the skulls are left lying around, because they can dig their horns into the mud and rub them against trees, and the tannins of trees probably help to control the whole thing. He's wearing some vegetation over the back of his horns. Now the middle of his head, where his horns form that very big horny, bony, that big mass of horn in the center of his head is what we call the boss, and it's only the bulls that have it. But he's wearing some sort of vegetation. He's picked up some creeper or something that's draped over his neck and it's hanging down, and he thinks it's flies, and he keeps flicking his ears because it's tickling his face. And when you're out walking, when you see, so when you're out walking, this is the buffalo you want to be careful of, because in the breeding herd, the massive buffalo that you find in the breeding herd, they're pretty much relaxed with regards to us humans, but it's these old bulls that have left the herd, bulls that we call dugger boys. Dugger meaning mud, because they like to lie around in the mud all day. It's these dugger boys that can be a little bit aggressive, and you don't want to meet up with them in these reeds on a walk. Just getting back to the stalks, and a question from Vivian in Chicago. Hi Vivian. Vivian wanting to know the difference between a saddle-billed stalk and a saddle-backed stalk. And I can't answer that question because I don't know the answer. And I don't know the answer because I don't know what a saddle-backed stalk is. Can somebody please do a Google search for me? Well, we have quite an angle here, so it's awkward. But now that he's moved, I can move forward a little bit. I can just roll forward. Got it? Looking out. Look at that look. The corner of his eye. Straight from the car. I know it looks like a bit of an angle because we were parked on the bank of the river. But Vivian, I have to be honest, I haven't heard of a saddle-backed stork. So I'd have to look that up. Unless there's someone out there that would like to do that for me and just send an email to Aaron O'Brien. Drive questions at wildearth.tv. I don't know what a saddle-backed stork is. The saddle-billed stork has this yellow saddle shape. It's not quite the cere, C-E-R-E. It's not quite the cere, but it's a bright yellow thing on the bill that's shaped like the saddle of a horse, or the saddle one uses on a horse. That gives it the name. That's just in case nobody knew what the back end of a buffalo looked like. And since we only have his back end, see, we can go back along this little track and film that giraffe on the other side of the river. The giraffe, big bull giraffe. Hello, Buff. Tall to the top of his horn. Is he a bit far? Is he a bit far? Yeah. Okay. If you zoomed out, would you get the scale with that little grove of trees? Okay. Well, thanks to David T, my old friend from Long Island, Jack. Ex-dog. Jack and David both saying that the saddle-billed and the saddle-back stork are the same thing. I've never known it as a saddle-backed stork. I must actually look at that. Look into it. But thanks for that, guys. Answers that question. Quite a breeze today. This must be somebody new. Hello, Brad. Brad is in Wisconsin. Have I ever been charged by an animal while on drive? Yeah. I guess you could say I have. There's a lot of dispute as to what is he doing, this giraffe. and then he disappears. Almost a ton, 18 foot of animal just disappears. Brad, yes, to some extent. I mean, I've never been charged in a vehicle that has resulted in the animal hitting the vehicle. And then there's the concept of the mock charge, which some people dispute as to whether you could even use the word charge in the same sentence, because it's merely an animal trying to either stop you from coming closer or anyway. But yes, I've had a number of animals rushing at the vehicle in aggression because they don't like it. But I have to say, at least fortunately, touch wood. If I can touch a book instead of wood, water, I'll touch this wood. Wood. At least they haven't hit the vehicle enough. I haven't had to react to that scenario. Of sand and it's about the amount of sand that's pushed up from the sides as it's been moving in its serpentine motion. There's another saddle bull coming in. That's the male. The dating site does thing work. I think we better go back to the pad. Let's just go back and see. Because up until now, we've only ever seen the female. It was definitely, I could see it in flight. I could see that was a male. I'd like to see him land next to her. Maybe they're going to do a bit of a... See, it pays to come back after a while. Look at the Nyala bull. Back. We'll move forward. But Mrs. Saddlebull is not here now. She might be the other pan at the back. The bachelor group of Nyala, male Nyala. Go back in. I just want the same blade of grass, piece of grass, a little bit of sparring. It's not serious, because when Nyala gets serious, they do more of a strut than horn bashing. Doing it anymore. Yes. gonna try, it'll make a noise. Sounds like I might have tied the mic down too tight. Yeah, I'm holding. Okay, I'm holding. Go for Andy. Okay, turn down. Adjust what? Oh, you mean you turn down the sound of the mic? Right. Okay, well, I've loosened it as much as I can. Okay, so when I'm done, we can turn up channel 2. Whole dorsal crest standing up. So he's displaying to another bull further in. But now they've been disturbed by our presence and moving deep into the bush. I mean, there's a lot of Yala bulls around here. She's quite relaxed. This is a waterbuck. We haven't really seen waterbuck much. We've seen them running off in brief glimpses, but she's actually standing still for a change. Yeah, not standing still, she's not running. Very pretty antelope. The hair of the waterbuck is a lot longer than all the other antelope because, as the name suggests, they are associated with water. They invariably are always near water and grazing on the grasses that you find close to water, which are the sweeter grasses. But their coat is waterproof. They secrete an oil from subcutaneous glands that help with waterproofing of their system. Their hairs are specifically designed to help waterproof the body, so that if they stay in water for extended periods of time, it doesn't affect them too much. And it's probably one of their main defense mechanisms, is running into water when they're attacked by a predator, even to the point of just being so deep that only their nose is sticking out. But for an antelope, they're quite furry. Maybe not visible from here. This is a big female, it's a big waterbuck cow. I doubt whether she's on her own, because it is not really common to find a female on her own. It's fine to find a bull on his own, but generally you find females in groups, females and youngsters. This helps to to answer this question about inbreeding and if it's always the same male that is breeding, but it isn't, because, and I can only really say this for this part of the world, because other parts of the world, well, no, other parts of Africa, with different habitats and different dynamics, work differently. So please make note that when I answer things about certain behavioral traits of animals, we're really just talking about this area where the bush is quite thick. The herds don't live in very big groups. You might find 3 or 4 females, and we can talk about waterbuck or kudu or nyala. A lot of the antelope are in relatively small groups. Sometimes they do come into estrus together so that their calves are all the same age. But strangely how the crocodile and the hippo have both adapted to this aquatic environment of theirs by having their snout, their nostrils, their eyes and their ears just raised enough that the majority of their body can stay underwater, but those vital organs just stick up enough.
This is the big male, by the way.
This, no, I don't know, it could be. Let me see where he went. It's one of them, but I don't know if it's the big one. So I think it is him. I can see his blue sticking out underneath that little branch. Little baby jackalberry tree. Hello, primate. Hello, boyki. Oh, there's the baby and that little baby jackalberry now. Hello, dear. There's another big there's another big male still in the Maruti. I think that was the bigger one that was up there. Hard to tell unless we get to see them all and see how they interact to see who's the boss. But there's still here comes the big male. This is the big one. Yeah, imitating, or rather. What's that for a noise? That's the big male, asserting his dominance. And we've got a female, it's probably the mother of this youngster that's submitting to him. Dear wanting to know, are vervet monkeys the only monkeys? Well, yes, dear, they're only Cercopithecine monkeys. We do have baboons. And we do have 2 species of nocturnal primates. So I guess you could say yes, the only would they be considered prosimians, I think. Don't know, got to look at that. Got to dig into my memory banks to sort out that bit of the family tree. But yes, the only monkeys we have, the baboons are not true monkeys because they are baboons. And the bush babies are not monkeys because they are galagos. Okay, let's see if this crocodile, sadly we've lost the sun on the crocodile's face. But I hope he might just stay there. He or she, hard to tell. Might just stay there. So I can get a little bit closer. I can't see you, crocodile. I can't see you at all. Crocodiles are very, very sensitive to sound. And I have no doubt that he was probably, or she, was probably out of the water when we were coming in, and it must have slipped into the water as we were arriving. Can you see it? Yeah, that little thing down there. It's not a very big croc, it's only about 6, maybe 6 foot. But any closer I'm going to push it off. So I think that's good enough for now. We can try and get closer once we've at least got it on cam. Crocodilius niloticus. And Nikki in Tacoma in Washington wants to know how to tell the difference between male and female crocodiles. And the only way to do that, Nikki, is to catch them and unfortunately to inspect the genitals, because crocodiles don't have genitals like other animals. Well, they have genitals like reproductive. Let's talk about reproductive organs. It's called a cloaca, and it is not like the mammals, similar to the birds, yes, but it is very much unlike the mammals, where the genitalia of males and females differ externally. With crocodiles, unfortunately, it only differs internally. And with a crocodile this size, with only its head sticking out, it's physically impossible to tell. Often with a very large crocodile, you can tell the males, the big bull crocodiles, because they're just so big and bulky, and they actually know. Scratch that. Jury, please disregard that last statement, because big females can also look rather big and bulky. But yes, the only way really is to have them in captivity and to be able to physically do an examination, which I don't believe is very pleasant. I've never had to perform that examination. I won't go into the details, but as far as I know, that's one of the only ways to determine sex in a crocodile, is to do an internal examination using fingers. Of course, they don't have to do that. They know automatically. Crocodiles know the difference. I just wish I could commune with a crocodile, converse rather with a crocodile, not commune, converse with a crocodile to get an inside info, to get some insight into the differences. Okay, I'm being silly now, but not easy to tell. I'm going to try and go forward a little bit, maybe get a little bit closer, but we're going to be in the back of its head. What we're seeing is the top of its head. It's facing to the left. Its snout is that tiny little thing sticking up just to the left of the main part of its head, and then the length of its snout is still underwater, and then its eyes, and then that bony protuberance that comes towards the back of the head that holds some sort of a hollow opening that is believed to assist with pressures and sensitivity to atmospheric pressure, even sound, although it does have ears. It would be nice to get to the other side of the dam. We've got a sunset that's not going to be seen because we're below the crest in the west. I think that look, rather than having it dark, I guess you can't really see from there. Hello, Kathy. I think Kathy might be a new viewer. Where's Kathy from? Kathy wants to know what I would do if I was approached by a dangerous animal. Look at that. Now we get to see the croc in the that light. Yeah, that's lovely. The croc in that golden pond. Kathy wants to know what I would do if I was approached by a dangerous animal. Kathy, I live in the bush with all these four-legged animals so that I don't have to deal with the dangerous two-legged animals that you find in the city. Because the only dangerous animals are the two-legged kind, and those are the ones I'm scared of. To try and answer the question a little bit more, this calls for a depends. It really depends on so many different circumstances. What animal it is, why one is maybe in danger. Because generally speaking, all the animals that we have here, lions and leopards and elephants and crocodiles, okay, let's just exclude crocodiles for a moment, because they're reptiles and they haven't really evolved for the last 250 million years, and they're not likely going to evolve very much more in the next 10 or 20. So let's exclude them from this conversation. But most of the animals here are not dangerous. They're only dangerous when it comes to what we as humans do and how we behave that puts ourselves in danger. Ordinarily, these animals that we live with here live very peaceful lives. They don't want to cause trouble. They don't want to have interspecific confrontations. They can't afford to be injured. They can't afford to get into altercations. So essentially, I don't see any of these animals that I live with in the bush as dangerous. But it is my behavior, or the behavior of the people that I'm with, or behavior of other people, that can create a dangerous circumstance, because people don't know how to behave with these animals, and these animals merely want to protect themselves, or their young, or their territory, or they just want to react to the ignorance of humans sometimes, and so they're considered to be dangerous. The other factor to include in this discussion would be that if you come from an environment that makes you unfamiliar with the animals in this environment, your behavior, your gait, your posture, everything about you is going to attract attention, and that is going to make animals dangerous toward you, because you are maybe seen as potential prey, or as vulnerable, if not prey. Running from us. And they're strutting, and Impala strutting could mean something. And they've all settled down just off to the right in some thick bush. Maybe it's just our presence that got them a little excited.